Okay, so yesterday we were talking about real estate investment, making sure your credit score is good. And the other thing, so I'm going to be totally vulnerable and transparent with you here. We are multimillionaires on paper. We are very cash poor. And when I found Amber, I was like, we put all of our money into real estate. I know it'll pay off, but right now I can't get anything out, and I want to make sure that we have a plan in case something happened to us. I will tell you, I had a false security in my life insurance. But when I talked to Amber, she asked me some really good questions, and I was like, oh dear, we need to have a plan B here, which is very doable still, even if you don't have a lot of financial resources. We were paying for insurance that we will be switching over to something with living benefits. But also she showed me how we can start investing now. So when we retire, we will have 2 million in the bank cash. And that just feels to me like a huge safety net. Lots of options. I want to bless people. I want to have the ability to be an angel funder, things like that. So Amber was super enlightening to me when we talked. So I want to turn it over to you, Amber, so you can just kind of give your background and a little bit about what you do, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Okay, perfect. Yes, thank you so much, April, for this opportunity. And I hope everything I share today has great value for, those that are going to listen and to gain some of this information. So my name is Amber Peterson. I am a wife and a mother. I've got my 4 kids somewhere lurking in my house. So you might be able to hear them in the background a little bit. But I'm also a licensed financial professional, and also currently being certified as a money coach, as a life coach. And I just think it's so important just to know what kind of options are available and out there, just because a lot of times we just don't get that information. And so just having that can, help us move forward in our own financial journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that so much. So the first thing that really got my attention when I was talking with you was knowing I didn't even know what living benefits was. So can
Mhm.
you tell, so I have the traditional life insurance where if I pass away, my kids get money, but I
Mhm.
don't have any sort of care. So tell us about living benefits.
Yeah, and it's going to really depend on the company you go with too. So I'll give kind of a generic overview, but then definitely each company is going to do it maybe just a little bit differently in what they cover. But yeah, just like you said, traditionally life insurance, when we look at it, we look at it as a death benefit, right? If we pass away, then our family gets some funds, which is great. But at the same time, if things happen to us while we're living, that makes it difficult not being able to access those funds. And so one policy that has come up with, in the industry is called a term with living benefits plan. And basically it allows you to use the death benefit while you're living for certain things. And usually major things that come up in our lives that we don't plan on happening, but usually can have a major financial impact. And so those kind of 3 areas is a critical illness, a chronic illness, and a terminal illness benefit. And I'll just kind of briefly go into each of those and what they mean. So critical illness, and once again, it will depend on the company, but we usually cover major illnesses that usually have big financial implications, especially with the hospital stays. So things like, heart attack, stroke, if we're diagnosed with cancer, kind of those major illnesses. And what these companies allow is you can take a certain percentage of the death benefit and actually use it for your care. So you can use it for the hospital bills, and the treatments you're going through. And that alleviates a lot of that financial burden for families saying, oh, I have, several $100,000 as a death benefit I can use for that particular illness, which is a blessing.
And
And
that's
then
huge because I witnessed that with my friend Lynn, who passed away from metastasized breast cancer. There are certain things that she just had the basic health insurance, the state health insurance. So certain things were covered, but many, many, many things were not. And she had, options because we helped her. But I was literally sitting there going, what do people do? What do people do that don't
yes.
have any and she was younger, you know, she had no long-term care. Hospice
Mhm.
is not something that actually, you know, stays with you. You just get a visit from a nurse once a week. So I, you know, when I was like, oh,
Yeah.
we'll have help, we have hospice, it was really just, you know, we could ask for somebody that would come like with help with bathing and things like that, like
Mhm.
once a
Mhm.
day. But that's not for someone to sit there with you to keep you company. Like, we were
Yeah.
so fortunate to have volunteers, but if you needed somebody that was in home care, a lot of
Mhm.
that's not covered. And if people don't have that cash in place, that's tough.
Absolutely. And it presents kind of a major financial burden or a I guess a time and energy burden on family, right? Because a lot of people that don't have kind of those things in place, they say to family, okay, well, I can't afford it, or I need help with this. Can you help take care of me? And we experienced actually a little bit of that with my grandmother, where now she was at a point in her life where she didn't need a lot of assistance, but we were taking care of her for about a year and a half or so. But then she did need that more specialized care from licensed, doctors and professionals to
Hmm.
really take care of her. And so, yeah, it's kind of one of those things as family members kind of come up against that. What do we do? And
Yeah.
what funds do we have? Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. And then what I liked too is it was very similar in price to what I was paying for
Mhm.
my death benefit life insurance.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, maybe even exactly the same. And yet there was the living benefit option. And even
Yes.
there are some that you can pull just the cash, some of the cash policy, not even for if you are ill, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, so I was just going to go over those last two things on the term, and then we
Yeah.
can actually talk about some of those others that I like to look at a little bit more if you're using it as like a supplemental retirement benefit. So we can definitely
Hmm.
go into that too. But the chronic illness, actually, you already kind of mentioned, is if we are in need of long-term care within a life insurance policy. And what they define as kind of long-term care, and this is something it sounds like your friend had, is if we can't do a few of the basic living functions. And when we think of basic living functions, it's things like, can we get up and move around? Can we go to the bathroom on our own? Can we fix our meals, and get ourselves, fed? Can we get dressed on our own? So just really basic things that most of us take for granted. But if they can't do those things, then they qualify for that chronic illness. So like you said, in-home care, or if they need to go to their facility, currently like my grandmother, and need that more kind of around the clock assistance. You can actually then use a portion of the death benefit to pay for that every single month for their care for
That's
that as
awesome.
well. Which is amazing, right? Because then it alleviates once again that kind of burden. And then that kind of third benefit is a terminal illness benefit. So if heaven forbid we were ever diagnosed with a terminal illness, and what, I guess the community defines that as if we have less than 12 months to live according to the diagnosis, then you can take a good part up to the whole value of the death benefit to then use however you need. If it's, final expense planning, if it's those that want to accomplish certain things, before that time, spend that time with family, if they want, income replacement, all of those things can be used for that as well. So yeah, and then if you don't use any of those living benefits, it's still there for the death benefit as well.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That's awesome. And
Yes.
then what I liked too, we were talking a little bit, so just saving and even like,
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, I'm getting so old, it's too late. And then you got to show me like the bar curve and like if we put this much aside and what it would
Yes.
actually grow to. I was like, so it's never too late.
Yeah. I do think just in saving in general, the earlier we do start saving, the more we have time and compound interest on our side. But just like you
Hmm.
said, it's always good to review and look into saving no matter what age we are. Because right, starting to save somewhere is better than nothing at all, for sure. And kind of the next, I guess, product or life insurance strategy you can go into is what we call an indexed universal life strategy. And this is the one I was mentioning earlier, is a little bit more of that supplemental retirement planning.
Hmm.
And what it does, a little separate from the one we were talking about, term of living benefits, is that it's building a cash value. So then you can actually use that for several things throughout your life. You can use it for like a supplemental retirement. So if you want that for retirement, perfect. Or you can use it throughout your life to, if it's, let's say, paying off debt. Or let's say you want to use the money that you've saved in there towards real estate, like you were just saying you were investing in real estate, or if you have children that you want to help. Or another great thing is if we get one of these for our kids as they're younger, they can use it throughout their life for, let's say, college, or getting married, or buying their first home. All of those different things can be incorporated into it. And there's just kind of a few features that I think are really beneficial to learn about. Unlike traditional retirement methods, like usually like investing like in a 401k or IRA, or those type of things, when you invest in those things, you have to pay taxes later. So anytime you withdraw money out of that, usually in retirement, they usually don't let you take it out before, but in retirement, then you're going to have to pay taxes on it. With this particular plan of the Index Universal Life is that it grows tax-free. So everything you take out of it does not have those taxes. And the reason for that, because they're like, well, you have to pay taxes, right? And the reason for that is because we already pay taxes in income. So that's already in place. We already do that all the time, right? With like a W-2, taxes every single year. And you pay those taxes, and then the money you invest in there can grow tax-free. It's already been taxed on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I think that is a huge component of it. It does have a death benefit, but then grows the cash value that you can utilize throughout your
Hmm. Awesome.
life.
If you had anything like kind of you wish you knew then what you know now,
Yeah. Hmm.
what would you change about how you planned for financial security?
It's really interesting you asked that because, I've talked to my husband about this. He actually was a financial advisor for years. And back in the day, I wish I knew about these strategies because it would have incorporated protection into our portfolio. Most of us, we go off the information we were given by, our parents and those we grew up with. And that's kind of how we formulate our knowledge about finance and money, which is okay. But we just want to make sure that is that everything I need to know to serve me and to help me get to where I want to be. And so for me personally, we saw what happened to clients back in 2008 when the market completely. And so many that had just been invested in things like the 401k or IRA or stocks that were all tied to the market, their investments then completely plummeted. I mean, we saw
Mhm.
people lose 50% out of their accounts. And we were
Mm.
going, oh my goodness, if we had known these strategies earlier and they started implementing them, they could have mitigated some of those losses, because something like an IUL, it doesn't lose funds when the market. So I
Yeah.
think that would make a huge difference moving forward.
I
Mhm.
think that's the hesitation too, at least for us, where we're like, I don't really want to invest in the stock market because we watched that with
Mhm.
friends or older relatives, and then also just watching what happens with real estate, how we exponentially can make a return on
Yes.
investment.
Mhm.
But that can happen over time with something like what you're saying in terms of it being tax free. And when you
Mhm.
compare the two, they can be actually fairly similar if you have a long term plan with it. So,
Absolutely. And the great thing is it's permanent, right? So
hmm
as long as all of the premiums are paid, it's permanent. And it
hmm
can really complement, especially something like if you're investing in real estate, or even if you do have investments into the market, this is a
hmm
great strategy to kind of complement that. So you have access to cash and you have access to also some tax-free growth.
hmm yeah,
Mhm.
love it. Um, Anything else that you would like to add or mention? We're going to put your website and how to contact you for questions. I know you've answered so many questions
Ah.
for me and then asked me some really great questions. So I appreciate how thoughtful you are, and it's always fun to connect with you. But anything else that you'd like to add, and then we'll go into our question answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just say for all those that are listening, just take the time. And I know because sometimes finances and money and insurance, it can all seem like overwhelming and who do I go to? But I really would take some time and just look at what you have, know what you have in all of your accounts, know what you have for insurance, and see, is this going to benefit me and my family moving forward? Right. I think empowering, women and men with this knowledge is just huge. because then they can make the best decisions for their family and towards the goals they want to achieve and have everything they want for their future. And so definitely take time to do that. And then if you do need extra advice and information, don't hesitate to reach out, because the more information you have, the better it's going to be for you and your family.
I love it. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
Such a pleasure. Okay, we'll end the recording here and then we'll
Okay.
go to question answer.